Hey everybody, ronarray here, and I love the builds with beautiful authentics. But when such builds can also be relatively cheap, strong enough to handle all endgame content, including tier 4 bosses, and fast to play, it sounds even better. So in today's video, I want to showcase a full build guide for Demon Mummy Infernalist build. The build that I wanted to try out exactly from the announcement of Path of Exile 2. The form looks absolutely great, and we can reach up to almost 1000 Demon Flame stacks for great DPS, while maintaining pretty nice clear in the maps too. How? I will explain everything that you need to know in this video. Check out dedicated timestamps as usual, and let's go! So first off, for build to work, we will need to be Infernalist and use Demonic Possession, which will give us Demon Form, the skill that's going to transform us into a demon. When you are transformed into demon form, you can't use your weapon and focus. That way, it's making build relatively cheap, because you don't really need to buy a weapon and focus overall. Instead of that, you need to focus on other items. And when you are transformed, you're going to receive various bonuses. And every stack of Demon Flame is going to give you additional spell damage, which is pretty nice. When you're in demon form, you're also going to receive additional bonuses for your skills. So you're going to receive +6 of all spell skill and 25% cast speed. While in demon form, you're going to constantly lose life. But since we are using specific techniques in that build, you will be able to completely avoid it, reaching a very high amount of stacks even while mapping. And for bossing, we're going to use a dedicated tag, which will give you a chance to reach like 800-900 stacks without an issue, and even push them past 1000 if you will invest more into the build. To stay in demon form for longer, we will need to use Second Wind together with Ingenuity as supports for demon form itself. Second Wind is going to give us additional cooldown use, so when you will be out of demon form, you will be able to rejoin it immediately because you will have additional use. And while you are staying in the demon form, you will be able to just wait for the cooldown and have a demon form again when you will be out, because you're going to stay in the demon form much longer than usual. So how we are staying that long in the demon form? First off, we are using Ghost Wreath Tether Drop, which moves our life to Energy Shield. We're also using Mink's Heart, which is giving us reduced maximum life. That way we're making our life as low as possible. Right now in the current setup, as you can see, I have 258 maximum life. That way, since demon form making us lose % of our life, we will be able to stay into demon form significantly longer, because percentage of such low life will be not really high and we will barely lose life overall. We need to use 2 Mink's Heart for that, together with Ghost Wreath, and we need to avoid picking life anywhere. So on most of your items you're going to avoid getting life, and you will just get mana and energy shield. So as our main defensive layer, we are going to use energy shield by itself, which we can rise pretty high, and right now as you can see I have around 9k energy shield. On top of it we can also use a Green Feast aura, which is very cool and will help us with maintaining our energy shield high. So to stay in our demon form longer, we need to get life regeneration almost everywhere where we can. So for example, on our helmet we can get up to 20 life regeneration, which is pretty nice. On the boots we can get around like 21, 22, 2. And on the gloves we can roll life when they are killing enemies, but it's not really mandatory. Life regeneration is also available on the belt, which is a very cool bonus. And you can also roll it on Amulet too, so almost all our rare items except gloves should have life regeneration. That way our life regeneration will be huge, and it will be significantly easier to maintain our demon form, because we are losing percentage of life and we're just regenerating that life back. It's also very important to use a special jewels with percentage for life regeneration rate. It's going to improve our life regeneration overall, and it will be significantly easier for us to survive. I also recommend to roll those jewels together with stun threshold, because stun threshold is helping a lot against stuns. Our life is pretty low and it's much harder to maintain that. You can also add additional jewels with such cool bonuses as Area of Effect for Clear, together with life regeneration. Those could be a little harder to find, but are still recommended, because basic Clear is not that amazing, and Area of Effect is going to improve it significantly. Another very important question is how they are getting our stacks very high, up to 800, 900 and even up to 1000. And there is an interaction right now which could be considered a bug, but still pretty useful for our situation. When you are transformed into a demon, you can equip Muscular Stitch Demon. As you can see, it gives us regenerate life per second per maximum energy shield and cannot have energy shield. But when we are equipping this helmet, we are not losing energy shield for some reason. It seems like it's an interaction with a demon form, and probably at some point it will be fixed. So the build is perfectly playable without that interaction. But if you can use that, for example, for bossing, I recommend to equip that helmet, because that way your life regeneration is going to be absolutely insane. So, for example, right now I have 1000 regeneration when I'm using that helmet, and it's helping a lot with survivability, while maintaining our energy shield. So even if it will be fixed, the build still will be playable, but I recommend to use it especially against bosses, because 1000 of life regeneration is just absolutely amazing. In the normal helmet we have around 200 life regeneration, which is pretty nice too, but amount of stacks that we can receive will be kind of lower. So Muscular Stitch Demon, in my opinion, is a pretty cool thing that we can use at least against bosses. So talking about the rest of the tech and about the items, we just need to stack some resistances on most of them and as high energy shield as possible, because more energy shield will lead us to more survivability, and when we are going to equip Muscular Stitch Demon, is going to give us regeneration based on our energy shield. So if you have more energy shield, well, it will be significantly easier to stack more life regeneration. And even if in the future that interaction will be fixed and Muscular Stitch Demon will take away your energy shield completely, I still think it will be a great way to use it against bosses, because you will be able to just freeze and kill them while you're having that crazy regeneration and crazy amount of Demon Flame stacks. But it will be like high risk, high reward interaction, but for now you can just use it freely. So talking about other items, at Ming's Heart we need to make sure that we roll pretty nice damage for Chaos, and you can get Corruption for like increased damage or for example increased skill speed. Both of those are pretty good. And you need to make sure that you have life modifiers quality on all the rings, because that's going to give you reduced maximum life, and it's pretty important. So 24% instead of 20 will give us 8% less maximum life, which is pretty nice right now, and I recommend to get it. Same goes for Growth 3, there's a few bonuses with Corruption, when you can get more maximum life converted to energy shield, for example 58 instead of 50. I definitely recommend it to you, because I think it can improve our whole situation and amount of time that we can just stay in our demon form. For the rest of the items, just roll some resistances and mostly focus on mana. If you will get a very small amount of life, like here on the belt I have 25, it will be alright. I also built that with a very cheap price in mind, so most of my items are pretty basic, they don't have crazy numbers. For example, my boots are pretty bad here, and my belt is not amazing too, I just have basic resistances together with life regeneration. So most of the build works just fine on a budget. You just need to stack your life regeneration and get resistances. I also recommend to run Grants Immunity to Freezing Charm, because of the low life you could be frozen pretty easily and it helps a lot, even if you can maintain anti-stun. So now let's talk about our skills. Our main skill is Hexblast, which could be pretty nice with bonuses. And right now, as a support, I'm using Control Destruction, Arcane Surge, Inspiration, Consider Casting, and Magnified Effect when we are just farming mobs, because we really need AoE, and Magnified Effect here is very important. However, a pretty important part is that for bossing you need to take Minion Pact and replace your Magnified Effect with Minion Pact. I'm mostly doing it for Pinnacles and harder bosses. In the maps you don't really need to repick, the boss will just take a little longer, but not a lot of changes will happen. So Magnified Pact and Minion Pact can pretty much just take places for each other. We need Considered Casting because more spell damage is nice, Inspiration to fix our mana, Arcane Surge because we can get various bonuses for Arcane Surge, and I will get to it a little later, and Control Destruction because we are not really investing into creeds and just additional damage is pretty nice. So we're also using Blasphemy because to cast a Hex Blast we need to make sure that enemy is cursed. And to curse them consistently, we are using Blasphemy together with Despair and Ritualistic Curse for the zone. Right now, Despair is feeling pretty great because it's going to debuff enemies with less chaos resistance and improve our damage significantly. On top of it, we are also using a few additional skills. So, Dark Effigy here should be used at the start of the fight, especially with bosses. It's going to constantly attack enemies, and as a support, we are using Font of Mana, Withering Touch, and Ancestral Urgency. Ancestral Urgency just to use our totem faster, and Withering Touch is going to help us with Wither overall. So we're using Dark Effigy, which is going to hit enemies and just wither them, to make sure that we have as many Wither buffs as possible, so it's mostly for single target. To make sure that Dark Effigy is hitting enemies, we're using Contagion, which is going to debuff enemies and deal chaos damage over time. As a support, I'm just using Hinder, Chaotic Freeze and Persistence, so not auto bonuses. At the start of the fight we need to use Dark Effigy and after that use Contagion as well. To improve our damage against a single target, we are using a pretty nice bonus of Mana Tempest. So when you're fighting Pinnacles, for example, or just tough enemies, I recommend to use Mana Tempest immediately and stay in it. For the bonuses here I'm using Premeditation, Murderous Intent and Lightning Mastery. Because Mana Tempest by itself is a lightning skill. It's not really mandatory, but it's helping a lot with additional damage in some situations. I'm also using Temporal Chains as a second curse, mostly against just very hard bosses such as Pinnacles. In the maps I'm not really casting it that often, but you can still have it on the panel. Supports here are Heightened Curse, Decaying Hex and Curse Ground. All of them are kinda nice and you don't really need to explain any. As an additional skill I'm also using Ice Nova, because we can freeze enemies pretty consistently with a combination of Contagion, our Dark Effigy and additional bonuses. So Ice Nova here to improve our freezing potential. It has Glaciation, Astral Projection, Deep Freeze and Unleash. That way it's significantly easier to use it, especially at the start, especially when you can use it twice. I think it's helping a lot to just crowd control enemies in some particular situations. And talking about auras, we don't have a lot of spirit, we just have only 100, and since we're using Blasphemy for 60, we need to use one more aura. For the mapping, we're using Green Fist together with Cannibalism, so it will help us to recover some life and it's also going to give us additional bonuses for our Energy Shield. But for bossing, I recommend to just off your Green Fist and activate Withering Presence instead. For Withering Presence, we're just going to wither that enemy much more often. Together with Dark Effigy, it will help us to maintain Wither buff, which is improve our chaos damage at a very nice pace. So use Withering Presence for single target and Green Fist while you are mapping to maintain your Energy Shield consistently. That's pretty much all for the skills, but since we are playing Infernalist, on top of Demon Form with Second Wind and Ingenuity, you also have Summon Infernal Hound skill. Here we're just using Elemental Army, Mid Shield, Fire Mastery, Minion Mastery and Maim. You don't really need Maim, so if your level is not high enough I recommend to just drop it, and the rest of the skill here to just improve survivability of our Hound, so it will stay together with us much more often. Rotation when we are fighting is pretty easy. When you're entering the fight, you just need to put Dark Effigy and Contagion. After that, you can also use Mana Tempest and just hit enemies with Hexblast. Use Temporal Chains if enemy is kinda strong, and you can also use Ice Nova if you need crowd control in some particular situations. So now let's look at R3. Unfortunately, we don't need a lot of points into our Ascendancy, so you don't even need the last Ascendancy to play it. You're just taking Loyal Hellhound, which is pretty nice, together with Demonic Possession. And the rest of the points goes for spell damage and mana percentage. You don't really need anything else, and 2 Ascendancy points will stay unallocated. We don't need maximum life, because increasing maximum life is going to make our demon form harder to stay in. And we don't really need critical hit chance, but you can still take it if you want. Our main skill is not critting, because we just have a support gem which completely stops us from critting. That way we don't really need critical chance that often, and I prefer to have 2 free Ascendancy points. So talking about R3, we mostly need to take mana regeneration and cast speed at the start. Insightfulness is nice together with Maldian. You can also get like mana blessing and go slowly up. The most important part for our build is getting as many jewel sockets as we can, because jewel sockets can help us with stun threshold, area of effect, and life regeneration rate. All those bonuses are very important for the build, especially life regeneration rate. So I recommend to get as many jewel sockets as possible. That way we are taking a few here, we are going to the left, taking one here and here. And after it, we're also going to the right, taking dark entries for additional level of chaos skills, because most of skills that we are using are chaos, and taking one jewel socket here too. At the Amulet, I recommend to allocate just conservative casting to improve our mana situation. However, if you have enough mana, you can look at some other damaging bonuses such as Spaghettification, for example, or even Horizon if you can handle it. However, I recommend to be very careful with those, because for example, even Horizon can kill you in some particular situations. So it's better to go with something which is working and improving our overall situation, such as conservative casting. Up here we are taking Pure Chaos and Wither Away, some cast speed, together with Energy Shield almost everywhere where it's possible. I'm also taking Whispers of Doom, because it's going to help us with our Temporal Chains, together with Blasphemy skill. Going to the left and improving our Energy Shield is pretty important, and using Touch of Arcane together with small points here increasing Arcane Surge is a great way to improve our mana regeneration and also get some additional bonuses such as cast speed in the process, so I recommend to invest those points pretty early. The rest of points is pretty basic, but another important part that I recommend to take Howled for 20% of maximum energy shield as additional stun threshold is going to help us significantly against stuns, so take it as early as possible, and when I will have more points I will probably take energy shield point right here. Also, when you will have significantly more points, for example if you will get a few more levels, you can also invest into full recovery, which can provide 15% life regeneration rate together with mana regeneration rate. But you will need to spend a lot of points trying to reach in there, and those 2 nodes are not really providing a lot of bonuses, so I'm leaving it for significantly later levels if I'm going to take it at all. I'm also taking Master of Hexes because I think additional effect of the curses is a pretty nice bonus right now. It can help us with different bonuses such as additional damage through Despair and additional bonuses from Temporal Chains too. On top of it, the whole tree is very basic. We're just taking all Energy Shield, we're passing through Chaos Nodes, taking Arcane Surge and trying to take as many Jewel Sockets as possible. So in general, when we are playing the build, it's pretty important to keep Poison and Bleed in your mind, because Poison and Bleed is going to damage your life instead of Energy Shield. To avoid them, you need to use Life Flask, and using Life Flask helps a lot. So talking about Life Flask, we don't need to roll anything special there, just reduce charges per use and, for example, additional life recovery to minions, so our Hellhound will live a little better is usually enough. Just make sure that you're reusing it constantly, especially if you're receiving bleed damage or poison damage while you are mapping. So while playing the build, just make sure that you are staying in the demon form as long as possible, and when you are fighting the boss, you can use a Masked Stitch demon as I already mentioned, and you will need to wait before you will enter the boss fight. So usually if you are fighting Pinnacles, I recommend to stand at the entrance for some time. It could be like 5 minutes approximately for a very clean kill, and you will need to stack some Demon Flame in the process, because you will need a huge amount of stacks for the fight. While you are mapping, you don't really need to bother, and you could just fight most of the enemies with normal amount of Demon Flame stacks. You're still going to kill them just fine, and it's going to work alright. Another cool moment about the build, when you're moving, you have a very cool dash when you're just clicking spacebar. That dash is very similar to Blink, and it's very fast and very smooth, making the build very nice to play in my opinion, and a pretty good mapper, especially when you're using Hexblast with additional area of effect. So right now Demon Mom is a pretty original and kinda strong build. Even if the situation with the helmet will be changed in the future, I still think it will be a pretty decent bosser too, and you can improve the damage significantly just getting better corrupted items, items with more energy shield and stuff like this, while stacking more Demon Flame stacks when you are mapping or fighting bosses. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you will enjoy playing that build. See you next time, and ronarray out.